I posted on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you did.
And tagged into it saying, fuck you for these goddamn shitty AI tools that nobody wants. Goddamn if they didn't blow up my phone for the next week asking like, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. What else can we do? Turn off the AI. Hey everyone, I'm Mike.
And I'm Andrew.
We're the Midlife Guys. So before we start, we are missing a member of our team.
That's right.
Freeman. Freeman and his wife have welcomed their third child.
That's exciting.
So it is very exciting. And so he is getting to spend much deserved time with his family. And we wish him all the best.
Yes.
Today, I would like to talk about AI.
Well, that's a transition. Sure.
We're going to go
talk
ahead
about the future, right?
We're talking about the future. Absolutely.
Babies to AI. The future,
babies
yes.
to AI. That's what babies will be in the future. It's just AI generated.
Our consciousness will be on a server somewhere, right? Is that what's going to happen? I feel
terrifying. Terrifying. There's been a tremendous amount of discussion around AI over the past couple of years as more and more companies make investments in Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, and others. The thing about AI is that it's taken the world by storm and has rattled workers who fear that AI could impact or eliminate their job. Midlifers seem particularly worried about their jobs, but they're also among the biggest adopters of AI technologies. Other generations, including Gen Z, are much less enthusiastic about these AI technologies and what they could mean for future job opportunities. According to a recent Newsweek article, about 12% of employed adults use AI tools in their jobs. About 4 in 10 use AI to consolidate information, generate ideas, and learn new things. In LinkedIn's Workforce Confidence Survey taken in the UK, workers now use AI tools 3 times more than they did 18 months ago, with the largest user base being older millennials. In that same survey, 67% of millennials and Gen X say they believe that AI tools will help improve work efficiency. 58% think AI will boost career opportunities, and 60% believe that AI will actually help them learn new things. AI adoption rates within companies continues to climb, but a growing number of workers fear that this adoption is without any sound strategy. Mm-hmm.
That does sound right. But
does sound right, doesn't it? In fact, AI has pretty much become a buzz term in which businesses invest in these technologies with a goal of increasing efficiency, but have no actual strategy in place to train employees or what they're actually trying to get out of AI. I can tell you that has definitely been my experience. In fact, a recent paper from MIT published in late November 2025 showed that many companies are starting to regret laying off workers and replacing them with AI or investing in these new technologies as a whole. So, Andrew, are you ready to talk about AI and the impact that it is having on midlifers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is definitely a timely topic and something worth tackling. I'll be interested. I think we may have slightly different outlooks on it. We'll kind of see as we talk, but I'll be curious to hear what our listeners think as well. Although when I was kind of reflecting a little bit on this topic, we said we wanted to talk about this today. I thought it might be helpful, at least for me, to kind of level set where I'm coming from. And I think where probably a lot of older millennials or midlifers come from in terms of technology, because I think we have somewhat of a unique perspective here in that we're not digital natives, right? Like I remember the world before everyone had a personal computer in their house, before the internet took over everything. I remember, those old school like car phones that were like literally like installed into your car, and then like the bricks that you would have and then smaller cell phones. I remember when the iPhone came out. I remember using, AOL Instant Messenger to talk to people before Facebook was around. Heck, we're old enough that I remember you had to use your college email address to sign up for Facebook when it like first came out. It could only be on colleges. So, I think we've seen a lot of these technological revolutions that have happened. And I kind of put AI in a similar bucket of whether it was the internet or social media, smartphones, things like that, where there's all this promise and opportunity and excitement in the beginning. And then what we find out is that maybe it's not as great as it seems, right? There are lots of downside effects to some of these things. Like I remember, especially social media used to be, this exciting thing. And then you realize, oh, it's really just about money and them trying to like hook us on a specific platform. So we never leaved it. And so I think that there's, you know, that's why I at least have sort of a pretty wary eye towards AI and some types of new technologies, especially when there's this huge promise of like, this is going to revolutionize everything and change it. Given our previous experiences with technology, I take a bit of a pause because I do think there's a downside to a lot of this as well, which I think our generation maybe again has a unique perspective there because we've seen it before and after.
I think that's a really good point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. From a more personal perspective, I would say that also Andrew and I are not early adopters on
Yeah, that's a good point.
technology.
Yeah.
We do wait a little bit to see if something is going to
Yep.
actually matter because we
That's
have
fair.
seen so many technologies come along that have just crashed and burned very quickly.
Or even like the internet, like it evolves, right? You have the .com bust, and it still exists, but it's a very different thing than what it first was. And also on a personal note, I'm not sure if y'all can hear, my dog feels very strongly about technology, so she's
Clearly.
just decided to start barking randomly in the background. So that's fun
She hates
for this.
She hates AI.
She's very worried about her position in the world with AI. Yeah.
So I want to begin by really diving into that November 2025 paper from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In that paper, the researchers outline that about 12% of American employees, representing about $1.2 trillion in wages, could lose their job today, based on the current capabilities of AI. That's a mind-boggling number.
It's a big number.
Yes. In fact, the biggest labor disruption to date was made last year when Amazon announced that they would lay off 14,000 people due to the transformative nature of AI technologies. The paper goes on to say that there are essentially 4 labor pools that are in the most vulnerable state because of AI. The first being computing and technology, software engineers, data scientists, analysts, program managers, and related roles where current AI adoption is concentrated. Ironic. Cognitive work, including financial analysis and administrative coordination, finance, accounting, and similar business services occupations, professional services, but specifically health care administration, which is, of course, a huge segment of the labor pool right now as boomers continue to age. The thing here is that the MIT paper goes on to say that while these labor pools are the most vulnerable, it is up to the individual employers as to whether or not these tools will be used to enhance someone's job or replace it. That sounds like a cop-out to me. It also goes on to say that there's a distinct breakdown when it comes to skill sets and how AI could or could not replace a job. The people that are most vulnerable in these labor groups are those that have 10 years or less experience in these sectors. Yikes. So, not midlifers. We are all far beyond our 10 years of experience. Far beyond it at this point.
Well, I mean, not that far. I guess we're like double that probably. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's far.
So the most vulnerable groups would be the younger millennials or Gen Z. The analysis is that while AI can be useful in increasing efficiencies, the collected knowledge of older workers who range from 40 to 65 cannot be replaced by these technologies right now. AI just isn't there yet, but that's not to say that it couldn't get there. Well, okay, what do our listeners think? Andrew, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that was in there. I think there are 3 things that kind of stick out to me as you were talking. So one was something you just mentioned about I think that midlifers AI is something that you mentioned earlier we're adopting that could impact our careers is something we certainly need to keep an eye on. But I do really worry about like younger workers, especially kids that are just coming out of college or school or have only been in the workforce for a couple of years. Because I do think it seems like the trend has been that those entry level jobs are the first ones that are going to get hit, or where companies assume like, oh, we can just have AI, whatever that means to them, like do this stuff for us. It's something that when I've talked to a couple of students recently, it's just like it's hard out there and it gets harder and harder. And so I do really worry about that. It got me thinking, like, what can midlifers do? And, maybe something we can do is try to offer support or coaching for them, or go back and listen to our episode on mentorship. Like that's, I think, got some good tips on how to try to help that younger generation, because I do really feel for them in particular, at least from the workforce side of things. The other thing that struck me is that a lot of the stats you're giving kind of reminded me too about a Harvard Business Review article I saw recently that talked about like the disconnect between what employers expect and what employees are seeing when it comes to AI. Is like a lot of companies, just assume it as a buzzword. So I feel like on so many earnings calls in the past like year or two, it's like we're using AI and becoming more efficient and cutting people, and then stocks go up because everyone assumes that's what's going to happen. But this Harvard Business Review article was looking at and polled employees and said that, like, there's definitely a productivity gap between what employers expect AI is going to do and what it actually can do in terms of helping employees increase their productivity. And in doing so, that's creating more pressure and burnout on employees as well. So I feel like that's an area that hasn't been studied a ton yet, but I do worry could be an issue, is kind of that disconnect that happens there. And I think the third point that kind of comes to mind is something else you talked about, what those most vulnerable jobs are. And I know you listed a bunch of them. Another one I've seen, there have been a lot of reports about are like legal services too. So things I feel like that can be easily commoditized and done probably more efficiently, like things that are fairly repetitive. And there probably is value that AI can provide, or new technologies can provide, in terms of making those tasks more efficient. But I do really worry about losing the human element in too many things. And sort of if we take away the human layer, or too much of the human layer that's on top of this technology, I just worry. I don't know what that means. And again, part of this is, I think, experience with other types of technologies that have, quote unquote, revolutionized our world. Is just like, if we take out the human piece of it, it's sort of the outcomes aren't really great for society as a whole. So I worry about what happens to that human piece. And do we, to your example you gave, Mike, about, having to rehire people, like what happens if we get in a situation where a ton of people are fired, and then a couple of years from now we're like, oh, maybe we do need some more humans involved and stuff. Like, do you go back and rehire them? How does that work? Are they available? Like, it just, like, I don't know. I do worry that the whole kind of mentality, which I've like started with social media and continues now, the whole like move fast and break things and we'll fix it later. Like, I don't love that strategy.
I am curious to hear from your perspective. You mentioned the younger workers, but as a dad, how does it make you feel about your sons who are far from getting into the workforce, but,
Right. I mean, the honest answer, which maybe isn't the best one, I don't know, is like, I'm hopeful that they're so far out from the workforce, there'll be some sort of new normal that none of us really fully understand or realize, and they will have time to adjust to whatever that is, and we don't end up living in some dystopian future that like science fiction has created for us. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's really my hope, is that, hope like there's enough change will happen and there's enough time, because they're still pretty young in school, before they'd have to get a job, that they'd be able to kind of figure it out or adjust to fit whatever that new reality looks like. But it is something that, my wife and I will talk about sometimes. It's like, what does the future look like? And it feels as though, and maybe it's because we're in such a disruptive period, it feels as though it's really hard to anticipate that. Whereas I feel like with our grandparents or our parents, like there were big questions in the world, right? But you generally, I think, probably had a good sense of like, if you do these things, you'll probably be successful, or you set yourself up really well. It just, I feel like we try to look in the future, and I don't know, it's really hard to see what the world's going to look like 20 years from now.
So for me, this paper from MIT really chilled me to the bone. I think that we're walking a very dangerous path here, where employers could make the incorrect decision and eliminate positions because they believe AI is some sort of a magic wand that can increase profitability by eliminating headcount. Um, and I've also seen this in the not-for-profit sector where non-for-profits are sitting there saying like, "Oh yeah, we need to adopt AI just because that's going to help us." But they have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea,
Yeah.
they no strategy, and they're asking anybody and everybody how they can adopt it, but they don't even know what they want. They just
Right.
yet again, it's become a buzz term.
Hmm.
Um, I have experimented with some of these AI tools. Some have been forced upon me, like Microsoft's Copilot or Intuit,
I know.
while others I have been voluntarily playing with, like ChatGPT. I have been blown away about by how awful these tools actually are. I will give you a quick example. So, as we've discussed previously, Andrew and I have several companies together, and we use QuickBooks to manage our bookkeeping functions for our companies. Millions of companies use QuickBooks. Starting last year, so 2025, they rolled out their AI tool, and what a fucking disaster. Fuck you, Intuit, for pushing this bullshit on us. It's horrible. It continues to make assumptions about transactions that are being made, incorrect recommendations about accounts payable and receivable, wrong, just completely wrong with forecast earnings. And everything is so slow now. It takes
It just like,
forever
yeah.
to get into QuickBooks and to do anything because these AI tools are just overloading the fucking system with projections that are not accurate. So last year, I think it was in the fall, I posted on LinkedIn
LinkedIn. Yeah, you did.
and tagged Intuit saying, "Fuck you for these goddamn shitty AI tools that nobody wants." Goddamn, if they didn't blow up my phone for the next week asking like, "Oh my gosh, we're so sorry. What else can we do? It turn off the AI." Well, we can't do that. There's just we they have no ability in which to do that yet. What else can we do? I'm like, nothing, nothing. You are dead to me, Intuit. You're dead to me. I will use a spreadsheet if I have to.
Fun fact: if Intuit wants to sponsor, Mike will say nice things about you next time. No, I'm
The
kidding.
fuck I
That's not,
will.
yeah, I know you will. Also, just to clarify, I don't think you cursed on LinkedIn, but that was
I
the
actually
theme
think
of
I
your message.
did.
Did
I
you?
think it could.
Oh, did you? LinkedIn's not really the place for that, but okay.
People are getting more and more daring on LinkedIn.
All right, that's a tangent. We can get back to.
So, all of this is like, as a society, we're having AI fever, which is similar to what we saw during the .com bubble. Um, it's this new fancy thing that everyone wants to be a part of, but no one is actually building a strategy on how to use it. And the products themselves are just sloppy as fuck. It's interesting to me that midlifers are so enthusiastic about these AI tools to help them be more efficient or to learn new things.
I'd be curious, like the long-term adoption rate. It's still not been that long, right? That folks have been trying to use this stuff. I mean, there is a lot of slop and crap out there, like that. I feel like has been overloaded with that. In my experience too, with certain types of AI, like we'll find like some of the Gemini stuff when I do Google searches now. Sometimes it's helpful. Like in the beginning, it was awful, but now every now and then I'll be like, oh, that actually did kind of answer what I was saying, or like ChatGPT I've experimented with a lot for business stuff. I do not find it super helpful. Like I think the writing is awful. Sometimes it can be helpful for like research and brainstorming, but like in the non-business world, it has been somewhat helpful. Like I think I mentioned in previous episode, like I've used it to help with like meal planning. Like that's been kind of useful to have it for that purpose, for travel stuff. Fun midlife slash homeowner issue is our boiler that heats our house is kind of on the fritz, which is good times. So I used ChatGPT to learn a whole lot more about how boilers work. I guess that was kind of nice that I could do that in a quicker way. But I guess with that stuff too, I don't necessarily see like what the business case for those companies in, because like that's helpful and nice things for me to be able to do, but it's not necessarily, I think, like adding a ton of extra value into my life.
Yeah, I just don't share the enthusiasm
Mm.
as a business owner that other businesses do. It's just I'm not seeing how it's saving time or saving money or making business tasks easier for folks.
Right.
And I am worried about the younger generation like you who are looking to grow
Yeah.
their careers. Um, I actually spoke with a friend last week. She's at an accounting firm, and she said that they are having a horrific time recruiting young professionals out of college because they're all either abandoning majoring in accounting, or they feel like they're going to take a different career path if they're so far down the major, because they feel like, oh well, AI is just going to replace me, so why even bother? And that's not a good place to be
Yeah. That's
at
a really good
all.
point, though, that, like, I didn't even think about that. It's just, like, the talk about these particular industries, especially that'll be impacted. Like, yeah, why would you if you're, like, a younger kid? Like, why would you go down that field then necessarily if you're like, "Well, what's the point if I'm not gonna have a job at the end of the line?"
And that's what I told her.
Yeah.
I said one of the challenges that you're facing is the narrative is out there.
Yep.
I mean, and it's everywhere. It's
Mhm.
everywhere. Saying that, like, well, these younger generations, or these entry level jobs are all going to be eliminated because of AI, and so kids in
Yeah.
school are like, well, what the hell? What the fuck's the
Yeah.
point? So, all right, the second thing that has me even more worried about AI.
Oh, boy.
So many things, so many things. Man, we'll see if this podcast actually sees the light of day. We just get suppressed by some AI formula.
YouTube says, "No, we're not talking
Yeah.
about this." Yeah.
Um, AI is only as good as the data that it takes in. That's why things like, the recipes that you were talking about are
Right.
boiler. They're great. That's great.
Yeah.
And it can be very effective with that. You know, Places like the Food Network have been publishing their recipes online for the past 20 years. So it's easy for AI to just gather up all that information. Um, However, in a recent survey conducted by Microsoft, the second most vulnerable profession that is susceptible to elimination because of AI is historians. So, for
Hmm.
anyone who has ever taken a history course in their life, knows that while history is in the past, we are still learning new things every day about events that occurred decades, centuries, or millennia ago. Historians are finding new firsthand documentation and interpreting what actually happened. All of that requires critical thinking and analysis, not something that AI is really trained to do. So, in the summer of 2025, the New York Times Magazine issued a dire warning that AI is literally rewriting history by taking into account historical biases. Charles Mann, the journalist and author, is quoted in the article highlighting the fact that AI doesn't have a bullshit detector. It does not. It just takes information and
Yeah.
spews it back out of you. In other words, AI can do a great job of collecting readily available information that is hosted on the internet. However, it can't decipher between what is propaganda and what is actually true. Terrifying.
Yep.
I wanted to highlight this particular example of the historians because we are living in a time when so many people are getting their information from YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram shorts. Information, including wrong or false or misleading information, spreads like a wildfire in minutes. While historians can fact check their sources and think critically about what AI has produced, think about what it could mean if it is in the wrong hands. This is clearly a concern for midlifers because, in a study conducted by PDK International and the Wasson Center for Civic Leadership at Christopher Newport University, it found that midlife parents are getting very, very wary of AI and its impact on their kids, both outside and inside of school. They
I can
don't
confirm
lo-
that.
Mhm. They don't like the fact that AI is creating false information. 68% of parents now oppose AI in the classroom. So, Andrew, thoughts? Listeners' thoughts?
Yeah, I love to hear other people's thoughts. I mean, So this is what you were asking earlier about, like, are you worried about your kids and job prospects online? Like, again, I'm not as worried there because I focus enough time. This is what really worries me is sort of how AI is or is not adopted into classrooms. That's one big concern I have. And then secondly, too, is it's so true that kids can't differentiate between what's real and what's not on AI. So like very simple example, but I think it speaks a lot is that you've got a 5-year-old and sometimes we'll watch like usually it's sports YouTube videos or something together, but he's all obsessed with Sonic the Hedgehog right now. And so he went on the other day and searched Sonic the Hedgehog. And so all these quote unquote trailers for the movie came up and he's like, oh, the new movie's out. They were all fake. Like none of them were the actual real trailer. And a lot of them was obvious to me. It was like AI slop and generated and it looked terrible and all, but like he thought it was all real because that's what he's seen and he assumes that what's in front of him is real. Now, granted, he's 5. Our older son, he still has sometimes issues differentiating between what he can tell is real or not real online. Heck, I have trouble sometimes differentiating what like is real and not real online. So I think that is a huge concern about, you'd made the point, Mike, it's how these models are trained. Like, how are they trained? Who's training them? Like, how are they being trained? I think those are all big, important questions that at least when I can see, it feels like a lot of these large AI companies aren't really answering those questions. And there have been media reports recently about how safety teams and sort of research teams have been disbanded at some of these companies. Maybe they're being reincorporated elsewhere, but like there are movements happening there. A lot of AI researchers at universities are often, there was a New York Times column about this maybe a week or so ago. They're often studying like 2 or 3 models ago. They're not studying the most recent model or products that these companies are putting out. So like that is, I've got a huge concern about what's going into these models because they are shaping people's reality. And again, who's doing it? And not to harken back to what it said in the beginning, but at least my experience with social media and seeing all the promise in the beginning and then where we are at today, it's like it was a small group of people who controlled information and information that people were getting from social media. It's still a small group of people that are now controlling AI. And that makes me really, really nervous about the ability to shape people's reality and not do it in a really like honest and transparent way. And sorry, but I have no kind of like not respect, but I have no sort of I'm not going to give Silicon Valley the benefit of the doubt anymore on they have people's best interest in mind because I don't think they do. And so I worry about, again, a small group kind of controlling what we're going to see.
Silicon Valley has never had the best interests of
That's
anybody
true.
at heart, ever.
Except themselves and their,
Themselves
yeah,
and their
yeah,
money.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the New York Times example really has me worried. It's true that if AI has the right data, it can be extremely useful. Um, and there are plenty of professions out there where data entry is a huge burden, and AI can take it in and process data much more quickly, that increases efficiency. It's the critical thinking part
Yeah.
that is the challenge. Um, I believe that one of the reasons that midlifers have been quick to adopt AI technologies is because of our age, really, and the fact that we have built the critical thinking skills necessary to shuffle through the bullshit that AI
Uh-huh.
produces. Um, but I do think there's this weird dynamic at play because we can, especially with that PDK international survey. So we're fine as midlifers using these technologies because we believe we have the critical thinking skills necessary to shuffle through the bullshit, but we don't want our kids exposed to it. Hell no, we don't want our kids anywhere near it. So,
Yeah.
um, and maybe maybe it just boils down to that. It's just the critical thinking. I feel like if midlifers continue to go down this path though of adoption and feeding money to these AI companies, then it will impact their kids in the long run, which is not good. It is a fire. It's like a fire. If you feed it more oxygen, the stronger it's going to become. And I
Yeah.
think that this is going to be a fundamental question for midlifers, especially midlifer parents. Who gets to use these tools? Or is it only the people with the knowledge and skills necessary to think critically about it? Is it everyone? I mean, yet again, we've talked about the haves and have nots. So, but
Hmm.
what do our listeners think? What do you all think? Let us know in the comments.
And if you're optimistic about it, let us know that too. I love to hear, people's positive takes as well. I feel like we've been very negative towards it, but again, I think it's just our experience with technology has not always been super positive.
Mhm. All right. To that note, we can talk about some positive stuff.
I
We
like
can.
that. We can end on
We
a
can
plus
end on
side.
a
Yeah.
positive note. Now we have to talk about how AI is actually helping midlifers outside of the workplace, because it ain't helping inside the workplace. Um, because there's actually some pretty divergent data. According to the University of Michigan National Poll on Healthy Aging, midlifers do and have been adopting AI in the workplace, but but they're a lot more skeptical about AI in their daily lives. They don't like AI tools related to their healthcare information or to coordinate medical care. I'm sure everyone, if you've been to a doctor, there's some like new portal you have to do, and it's all AI generated stuff, which is awful. They do like it when it comes to entertainment, planning trips, getting
Yeah.
recipes, social connections, and creating texts or images. Additionally, AI powered voice assistants and AI powered home security systems are very popular among midlifers who see these tools as enhancing their daily quality of life. They appreciate how certain AI tools can make managing schedules, especially schedules around kids, much easier. They also like how AI can filter information so that parents can plan events or outings with their kids. So it's not all doom and gloom. There are practical ways that AI can simplify things for midlifers, and they're taking advantage of it. All right, Andrew, go for it. Using AI to simplify your life.
Trying to, or in some ways, we definitely are, especially I feel like more on, at least for me on the personal side. Again, I don't see as much of the business value in exactly what I'm doing, but on the personal side, for sure. Like I mentioned before, the recipes and meal planning I think is great. Travel ideas and tips have been really helpful too. We also use, we have a couple of home pods at our house. So we ask Siri the weather usually every morning. Like my kids like to ask, what's the weather going to look like? Or we get updates on scores for different like sports leagues or games or whatnot. So that stuff's fun to be able to do. It definitely does make it more efficient and helps for sure. We don't use it a ton for scheduling or calendars, but I do know some other parents that do that kind of have some AI scheduling tools that they find really, really helpful to try to be as efficient as possible and schedule as much as they can. So I definitely think there are some upsides for sure, especially around the family. I will say one thing that I do get hesitant about though, not to bring it back down, but is giving too much like private or personal information. I mean, maybe it's too late because I feel like they probably know almost everything about us anyway. But the healthcare stuff does make me nervous. Like I don't like to necessarily be like, here is all my healthcare information and use with it what you will because I'm not always sure how it's going to be used. But outside of that, I do think it can be helpful for sure
I think we're way past that,
and
unfortunately.
probably are.
Yeah, I was talking to a doctor of mine who's like, "Oh yeah, we had to move to these AI tools just because the administrative burden was too much on the
Yeah,
practice."
great when they start
So
selling that information around, even if they say they don't. I'm like,
it's already been sold 50
that's probably
times.
true. Also, yeah,
Um, like you, I'm a Mac person, so I've got HomePods and
yeah,
iPads and MacBook Pros,
all the things.
all the things. And so, I don't know. I've never considered Siri like an AI. I
I mean,
know
yeah,
ChatGPT and OpenAI are integrated into Siri, but I guess it is. Never thought about it that way. But
yeah.
I mean, it's just for me, I was like, what's a voice activated tool that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't? I do find value in these things because it makes it easier for me to do certain things like scheduling stuff. I will be honest, and maybe it's just old man syndrome essentially at this point, but I never think to ask Siri for information.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
what time does the bar open or what time does the store open or what time
Mm,
is the movie? It just never occurs to me. I always manually just Google it. Um, when I guess I could easily ask, but
yeah.
I don't. So
I do think,
Yeah.
speaking of bars and restaurants, one thing that I think is probably an AI tool because it's been more recent, but I do love, it's super creepy, but it's helpful. On Google Maps, when you go to like a specific restaurant or bar, it tells you how busy it is at that time. That is very helpful. I do appreciate that. Yeah.
There we go. So, yeah, it's not all doom and gloom about AI because I do believe there are practical uses, but I also think we're racing way too fast into something that is untested and could have a very big downside um, in terms of like employment and just the overall health and well-being of people's um,
Of
uh,
society, not just
of
of people, I
society.
feel like, yeah. But yeah.
But what do you all think? What do our listeners think? Does AI support your life at home or at work? I want to hear from our midlifers. I want to hear what they from the community. Please leave your messages. Send us your emails. Post on our social channels. Andrew, we have blown way
Yes.
past 30 minutes at this point.
We have, yeah.
So if you've not done so already, please like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps us a lot. Remember that you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, and all your favorite podcast platforms. And until next week, good luck, guys.
See ya.